American Sniper 2014. Chris Kyle grows up in Texas learning discipline, hunting, and responsibility from his father, who teaches him to protect the weak. After witnessing terrorist attacks on American embassies, Chris feels compelled to serve his country. He joins the U.S. Navy SEALs, enduring brutal training that shapes his physical and mental endurance. Chris meets Taya, falls in love, and marries her, promising balance between duty and family. As the September 11th attacks shake the nation, Chris commits fully to military service, believing his role is to defend American soldiers and civilians from unseen threats, setting him on a path of sacrifice, honor, and internal conflict that will define his life. Chris deploys to Iraq during the early stages of the war, assigned as a sniper supporting Marine units in hostile urban environments. His exceptional accuracy quickly saves lives, earning him respect among fellow soldiers and the nickname Legend. However, his first kill weighs heavily on him, especially when the target is a woman using a grenade. Chris justifies his actions as necessary protection, yet emotional scars form silently. As combat intensifies, he becomes increasingly focused, separating emotion from duty. Meanwhile, Taya struggles at home, sensing Chris growing distant. War strengthens his reputation, but begins fracturing his inner peace, creating tension between his identity as protector and husband. During subsequent tours, Chris faces increasingly dangerous missions against insurgents and a deadly enemy sniper known as Mustafa. Each deployment sharpens Chris's skills while deepening psychological strain. He witnesses friends injured and killed, reinforcing his belief that vigilance saves lives. His body count rises, celebrated by comrades but haunting him privately. Phone calls with Taya reveal emotional distance, as Chris remains mentally trapped in the battlefield. He becomes obsessed with protecting his team, neglecting his own well-being. The line between heroism and trauma blurs, as Chris measures success through survival rather than peace, gradually losing connection to normal life beyond the war zone, and struggling to reconcile his actions with his values. Chris's fourth deployment proves the most intense, as missions escalate and losses mount. The hunt for Mustafa becomes symbolic, representing the embodiment of Chris's war. When Chris finally kills Mustafa during a sandstorm, the moment brings relief but not closure. The chaos of combat intensifies, and evacuation under fire highlights the fragility of survival. Returning home, Chris struggles with post-traumatic stress, haunted by memories of fallen comrades. Everyday sounds trigger combat instincts, distancing him from family. Though physically present, he remains mentally deployed, unable to reconcile the battlefield with domestic life. Victory feels hollow, revealing the unseen cost of prolonged warfare on the human mind. Back in the United States, Chris attempts to reintegrate into civilian life, but isolation and guilt consume him. He feels responsible for soldiers who died under his watch, questioning whether he could have done more. Taya confronts him about his emotional absence, demanding honesty and presence. Chris begins recognizing his trauma, acknowledging that strength does not mean silence. Slowly, he reconnects with his family, especially his children, finding moments of peace away from war. Though memories persist, Chris learns that survival requires healing. His journey shifts from combat to recovery, redefining courage as confronting vulnerability, rather than suppressing pain beneath stoic resolve and patriotic duty. Chris finds renewed purpose by helping fellow veterans struggling with similar trauma. He volunteers at VA hospitals and shooting ranges, mentoring wounded soldiers and offering companionship through shared understanding. Supporting others gives him a sense of peace and redemption, transforming his warrior instincts into protection through healing. Taya notices positive change as Chris becomes more engaged at home. Though haunted by memories, he channels them into service. Helping veterans reconnect with life reinforces his belief that brotherhood extends beyond the battlefield. Chris begins reclaiming balance, discovering that saving lives can occur through compassion as much as combat, and that leadership continues long after war ends, in quiet acts of support and solidarity. Despite progress, the psychological toll of war remains unpredictable. Chris understands the fragility of recovery, knowing trauma never fully disappears. He remains vigilant, cautious yet hopeful. His bond with fellow veterans deepens, built on trust and shared pain. Chris believes that providing structure and understanding prevents despair. At home, moments of normalcy return, and laughter replaces silence. However, danger persists unseen, as mental wounds are as lethal as physical ones. The film subtly underscores the irony that while Chris survives war zones, true threats can exist anywhere. His dedication to helping others becomes his mission, reflecting growth from sniper to guardian of healing, determined to protect even after leaving combat behind forever. Chris accompanies a troubled veteran to a shooting range, hoping to offer mentorship and calm. He approaches the interaction with trust, embodying his belief in helping those who suffer. Tragically, this act of compassion leads to his death, shocking his family, friends, and nation. The sudden loss highlights the devastating impact of untreated mental illness among veterans. Taya and the public mourn Chris as a hero, grappling with grief and unanswered questions. His death emphasizes the film's central tragedy. The war does not always end when soldiers return home. Chris's legacy becomes a symbol of sacrifice, bravery, and the urgent need for veteran support, understanding, and comprehensive mental health care across society. The funeral procession honors Chris Kyle with national reverence, showcasing flags, motorcycles, and silent respect from strangers. Taya reflects on their life together, acknowledging his love, struggles, and dedication. The nation recognizes Chris not only as a lethal sniper, but as a man shaped and wounded by service. His story sparks dialogue about patriotism, sacrifice, and the true cost of war. Soldiers and civilians alike confront uncomfortable truths about heroism and trauma. Chris's life becomes a reminder that service extends beyond battlefields, and that honoring veterans requires long-term commitment. The emotional farewell reinforces the film's somber message. War leaves lasting imprints on individuals, families, and societies that cannot be erased by victory alone. American Sniper presents a complex portrait of heroism, examining courage, duty, and psychological sacrifice. Through Chris Kyle's journey, the film explores the duality of protection and destruction, patriotism and pain. It avoids simple glorification, instead revealing the personal costs of war. Family, loyalty, and responsibility are central themes, highlighting how service reshapes identity. The narrative emphasizes that strength includes vulnerability and healing. Chris's legacy urges recognition of veterans' struggles beyond combat. Ultimately, the film serves as a tribute and warning, honoring those who serve while questioning the price of conflict. American Sniper leaves audiences reflecting on sacrifice, resilience, and the responsibility to care for those who return from war carrying invisible wounds long after the gunfire ends.